Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Cardano and its native token ADA. So if you guys like the content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also, please check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So Cardano is one of the tokens we've been talking about for a long time. This was one of the ones that I mentioned back when it was in this accumulation phase over here, that this was a basically historic time for Cardano, looking at its valuation against Bitcoin and identifying that this is most likely an accumulation phase before a massive breakout. And ultimately, we did see a pretty massive breakout from the bottom to the very top. We're talking about, somewhere between 200 to 250%, depending on exactly, where you're measuring the top from, and then of course how, where exactly you're measuring the bottom from. So more or less somewhere between 200 and 250% move against Bitcoin. From that point, it has actually bled back down to this level. So we're going to go through a few things in this video. So first of all, one of the reasons I get asked about ADA, why do I hold it? The primary reason that I hold it is as a hedge against Ethereum. Ethereum has a lot more developers behind it, but at the same time, Ethereum has yet to transition to proof of stake. It'll probably go well, but there's also really no telling how long it'll take to make that transition. Whereas ADA, obviously, instead of launching proof of work and then having to transition to proof of stake, they just went ahead and said, let's just do it how we want to do it now, and then we don't have to worry about, say, some complicated transition later. So the reason I hold ADA is more so as a hedge against Ethereum for this market cycle. So if we take a look at the price movement, though, if we draw, we're gonna look at a few moving averages. We're gonna look at the valuation of ADA against Bitcoin and against USD. If we draw a couple lines here, you guys know how fond I am of lines, and we just draw these over, essentially trying to show like where we're range bound between. It's these levels, right? So we've seen these levels before, these support regions right here, and then same thing right here. This was ultimately some of the major support and resistance levels that ADA has seen against Bitcoin. At the end of the day, right, the valuation of ADA does not have to respect any of this, but I'm just trying to show you where we currently are. Now, one of the things I think is interesting is if you plot out the moving averages, they seem to be pretty well respecting a couple different ones. So if you look at the 20-day, doesn't really do anything, right? There's really not a whole lot of useful information. Maybe you could say that the price, once it breaks down below the 20-day, it tends to become bearish. You can see when it holds the 20-day, or when it's above it, it's blue skies ahead. Even here, it comes back down to the 20-day, continued blue skies ahead. You break through it, bad news bears in the short term. Here, you break through it, bad news bears in the short term. But if we look at the 50-day moving average, I would say this one seems to be somewhat important. Maybe not so during an accumulation phase. A lot of times, some of the comments I'll get will be, it doesn't really matter down here. But again, during accumulation phases, these moving averages, the price is going to cross through it just by natural volatility. It's interesting in bear markets and bull markets to see how they respect these lines. For instance, you can see in this bear market, it came back up to the 50-day moving average before ultimately getting rejected right back down. Okay, so this was a major rejection by ADA against Bitcoin back over here in June of 2019. And then over here, when we came down to it, if we zoom in, you can see we kind of hovered above it from the beginning of August until the end of, until the second week of August. So we spent about 14 days right above the 50-day. Okay, but we ultimately fell down below it, and then when we bounced back up, you can see we came straight back to the 50-day and have been getting rejected by it for the last several days. So since September 27th, September 28th, the price of ADA against Bitcoin has been basically holding resistance at the 50-day moving average. Now, if we plot another moving average, let's plot the 200-day. Well, the 200-day seems to be where it's at least locally holding some level of support. So if we zoom in, you can see that it's basically getting stuck range bound, not quite because it did dip below briefly, but right now range bound between the 50-day and the 200-day moving average. Now, we also know that the 50-day and 200-day moving averages are pretty important in terms of talking about golden crosses and death crosses and changes in momentum of the market. However, as we've said many times, golden crosses and death crosses can a lot of times are not as important as they may seem. During the last accumulation phase for Bitcoin, or during the current one, we've actually had 3 golden crosses. In the last market cycle, we only had 2, and the one before that, we had 1. So there can be lots of golden crosses, there can be lots of death crosses. They don't necessarily mean anything. It's only in hindsight that you can say, oh, that was the golden cross that led to the major bull market or the major move, and we didn't see another death cross until after the bear market, or until once the bear market had started. So you can see that it appears that the price of ADA against Bitcoin may be getting squeezed between the 50-day and the 200-day moving averages. The 50-day is at 919, and the 200-day is at 863. So you can see we're currently at 879. If we plot on the 300-day moving average, you can see this is ultimately where we found support on the way down at the bottom, which at the current time is 752. Now, what's interesting about this is the similarity between the ADA Bitcoin valuation in terms of where it's range bound and the ADA USD valuation. Okay, so ADA Bitcoin is obviously different than ADA USD, but if you show the ADA USD valuation, in fact, if you plot on the 50-day and the 200-day, you can see that in the same manner, we are coming down to the 200-day, back up to the 50-day, and then coming back down. So despite the fact that we're measuring the valuation of ADA against 2 different currencies, Bitcoin and USD, it does appear that it's respecting the same moving averages for both of those valuation metrics. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. Now, if you guys follow the channel for a long time, I talk about, you know, the health of a coin like ADA hinges on Bitcoin being healthy. And one of the things we've spoken about before with Bitcoin, of course, is the 20-week moving average. And here I actually have the 20-week and the 21 EMA, so the 20 SMA and the 21 EMA band, so it's color-coded, because a lot of people, while I tend to use the 20-week SMA, well, some people like the 21 EMA. They're pretty similar, but they do sometimes have some differences. And the reason we use this is generally in a bull market, the 20-week is what's held as support. But you could, you know, by drawing the band instead of giving a single value, you kind of get a reference point in terms of just a single value, but more of a range of prices that you want to see held during a cryptocurrency bull market. So currently, Bitcoin is trying to hold this critical level, and you can see that we had 2 prior attempts to hold it back over here in September of 2019, and we failed to hold it, and then we instantly dropped down. And in fact, we dropped down to the 100-week moving average. And then later on, when we failed to hold it, we dropped down to the 200-week moving average with a wick to the 300-week moving average if we had extended that out, or if we were looking at the BLX. So we know that this level is very critical, because if it does not hold as support, then it's the bad news bears in the short term, and that Bitcoin will likely bleed fairly significantly down to one of these major moving averages, maybe the 50-week. The 50-week is a bit higher, it's 8,900, but the 100-week is at 7,800, and the 200-week is at 6,800. So this is a critical level needs to hold. I don't have to tell you that if Bitcoin does not hold that level, then ADA would most likely bleed against Bitcoin and USD. So it would most likely bleed against both of them if it did not hold, if it does not hold. Now, given Bitcoin's proximity to the 20-week moving average, this is what's causing a lot of hesitancy by a lot of people to be confident on altcoins, and this is why, as we've said on the channel many times over and over for the last several weeks, that every time Bitcoin retests the 20-week moving average, altcoins will likely bleed against USD and Bitcoin further than they did the last time Bitcoin tested the 20-week moving average. So if we switch over to the daily time frame to get a better show of where the 20-week moving average is, let's get rid of all these other moving averages that are noise at this point. And instead, we're going to go to the 20-day or the 20-week, but now it's the daily time frame, so the 20-day, and we're going to change it to 140 days, which is the 20-week moving average. Now, when we zoom in on this level, you can see that that Bitcoin has tested the 20-week moving average several times. And during this period of time, ADA has not fared too well against USD and against Bitcoin. So what the best thing for ADA, in my opinion, would be if Bitcoin can actually move back above 11,000 and back into the band between, say, 11 to 12K. I think this would be a lot more bullish for ADA. On the other hand, if Bitcoin comes back down to test the 20-week again, then this is probably going to put a lot of pressure on ADA in terms of USD and Bitcoin, and both of them will likely bleed. Okay, so it's not just to say that ADA would bleed if Bitcoin goes down. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but of course it also means that it would probably bleed against Bitcoin as well, because the altcoin confidence level when Bitcoin is only approximately 5% above its 20-week moving average is rather low. When Bitcoin crossed above the 20-week moving average back in April, in the short term, a lot of altcoins bled against it. It wasn't until it got up to this point up here and started moving sideways that altcoins really had their heyday. In the same manner, for Bitcoin, we would want to see it move back up to a healthy level above the 20-week and then move sideways, and this is what would allow altcoins to shine once again. Obviously, this is my opinion, this is not financial advice, but I'm just trying to give you my take on the market. So when we look at coins like ADA and we see, these points where it's getting squeezed between two moving averages, whether you're looking at ADA USD, the 50-day and the 200-day, or ADA Bitcoin, the 50-day and the 200-day, we recognize that probably within the next couple weeks, there's going to be a definitive breakout of ADA, either to the upside or the downside. Again, it does not take a genius to say that natural volatility will likely yield a substantial move in any given altcoin, but looking at these levels here, I would expect that either Bitcoin is going to move back into the region above 11K, or it's going to drop back down to the 20-week moving average sometime over the next couple weeks. It's probably not just going to move sideways, right? It's probably not just going to move identically sideways at $10,900. So I would anticipate it's either going to come back down to the 20-week within the short term, either the next 1 to 2 weeks, or it'll break back above into the 11 to 12K regime. Now, if you go back and let's switch to the weekly time frame, and we need to switch this back to 20 weeks. If you go back and look at Bitcoin during the last market cycle, we saw a pretty similar move. So we first had this move here that was a 20% drop to the 20-week, and then we came back up to the local high, the local top. So let me just draw a trend line to encapsulate that. So this would be the local top, and then this would be the local bottom. Okay. So Bitcoin came to the local top at 12K, this was at 460, then back down to the local bottom, which coincided with the 20-week moving average. It then slowly moved back up to the local top, and then back down to the 20-week, back to the local top, sideways into the 20-week, and then it blasted off. So if we were to look at that at present day, it would mean that 12K, if this were to repeat, which obviously it doesn't have to, but if it did, 12K would be our local top, and then our local bottom would be at around 10K. Okay, so in the same manner, we came up, we saw a 20% drop down to the 20-week, which also corresponded to the local low, or the local wasn't really a low, but it was the bottom of this reaccumulation regime, and then we're riding the 20-week for a little while. If we come back up to the top like we did last cycle, and then back down to the bottom, which maybe is whatever the 20-week is at the time, then this would be a situation where if it moves back up to the top of this range, then ADA will likely perform well against USD. However, if over the next 3 months, Bitcoin continues to test the 20-week moving average, then I would anticipate that ADA will have a difficult time holding its valuation against Bitcoin. And that doesn't mean it has to lose USD value. The reason is because, as we said before, altcoins do not do well, historically speaking, when Bitcoin is continuing to test the 20-week moving average. So in the short term, if Bitcoin moves back up to this regime and then moves sideways for a little bit, maybe ADA can do well against USD and Bitcoin. But if it continues to come back down and retest the 20-week for months, like it did last cycle, then ADA will likely have a hard time holding its valuation against Bitcoin. So I think I've basically covered everything that I wanted to cover in the video. Remember, altcoins are risky right now just because of Bitcoin's proximity to the 20-week moving average, and given, I mean, obviously given economic conditions in the world, there is a lot of uncertainty, right? However, ADA is one of the coins that I think is a good hedge against Ethereum for the market cycle, and will be one that I continue to hold. If you guys want access to the premium list, which is where I talk about how I handle my positions in these coins, then check out my website intothe.cryptoverse.com. So you can find that here. You get access to a weekly report, a weekly video, risk levels that I use to trade against, and a private Telegram chat room and a private Telegram alerts channel. Now, to give you an example of something that using these risk levels allowed me to do was, once ADA had that really nice run, I was able to sell a portion of ADA into Ethereum when Ethereum was 235, and then I saw the Ethereum move. So it's all about trading the risk levels against each other, and we have the risk levels of ADA against USD, against Bitcoin, and against Ethereum. So in terms of managing risk, it can help you identify, converting what to what can help reduce risk. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. At the very least, please subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Please give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Check out the premium list if you want access to exclusive content, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.